The year was 1997. Deep in South America, the United States Southern Command launched a mission cloaked in secrecy. Outwardly, it was described as a counter-narcotics operation designed to track the flow of drug planes slipping through Peru and Bolivia. Radar systems were deployed. Marines and Air Force personnel rotated in and out, all under the quiet guidance of the CIA. For Jonathan Wagan, a young Marine fresh from training, the jungle felt like another planet. The air was heavy, thick with moisture, every breath laced with the scent of wet earth and decaying leaves. Days blurred into nights, and the forest seemed alive, whispering with hidden voices. He was stationed at a remote radar site, its true location never revealed to him. Perhaps northern Peru near Iquitos, perhaps deeper inland. He only knew the endless flights, the drone of engines, and the silence of men who never asked questions. Every hour of duty was routine, scanning, watching, tracking. But somewhere in the back of his mind, Jonathan carried the unease that they weren't just hunting smugglers. Something in the tone of his superiors, in the shadows around the base, hinted at a bigger secret, one no one dared to explain. And he was right. For nothing in his training, nothing in his young life could prepare him for the night that would change everything. It began with a simple order. During a late-night watch, Sergeant Montel approached, his face grim, his words clipped. "There's been a crash, we need to check it out." No explanation, no details, not even a whisper of UFO. To the Marines, it could have been a smuggler's plane, a lost craft, maybe even a local military aircraft gone down. Wagan, along with Sergeants Allen Atkins and 7 others, assembled quickly. Weapons ready, nerves tight. They pushed into the night. The journey was grueling. They rode in convoy as far as the trail would allow, headlights bouncing across muddy paths. When the terrain grew too wild, they dismounted, moving on foot through tangled vines and roots that clawed at their boots. The jungle pressed in on them, hot and suffocating, alive with unseen creatures. Hours seemed to pass before they reached the ravine, and then they saw it. Nestled against the granite cliff, half buried as if the earth itself had tried to swallow it, lay a craft unlike anything built by human hands. It was vast, around 20 meters long, shaped like an enormous, seamless egg. Its surface was no single color, but a living shimmer that shifted from deep violet to emerald green to the silver sheen of moonlight on water. It glowed faintly, pulsing in slow waves as though the craft itself were breathing, alive yet failing. The Marines stood frozen, weapons lowered, words caught in their throats. Light traced along the edges of the object, flickering weakly, then fading, as if the machine's heart was dying. The silence was broken only by the drip of a clear, syrup-like liquid spilling from an opening in its side. The fluid clung to the rocks, thick and unnatural, reflecting the faint glow of the craft. Then came the detail that drove cold fear into their bones. The hatch hung partially open, and from its dark interior extended an arm, thin, elongated, pale against the shimmering hull. Its shape was unmistakably not human. The Marines exchanged glances, their training collapsing under the weight of the impossible. What lay before them was no smuggler's plane, no secret military jet. It was something else entirely, something not of this earth. For a long moment, no one moved. The Marines stood frozen on the edge of the ravine, their eyes locked on the shimmering hull. Some tried to steady their weapons, but their hands trembled. Others whispered under their breath, as though words might break the fragile spell holding them there. Jonathan Wagan felt something different. A pull, a gravity that had nothing to do with the earth beneath his boots. His breath slowed, his heartbeat thudded in his ears, and before he could stop himself, he was stepping closer. The craft loomed above him, impossibly smooth, its surface alive with colors that rippled like liquid light. He could hear it too, an electric hum, soft at first, then rising in pitch like a guitar amplifier warming up. The sound vibrated through his bones, crawling up his spine, until suddenly it stuttered and began to fade, as though the machine itself was gasping for life. Below the hatch, the strange liquid dripped steadily, splashing onto stone, pooling like mercury at his feet. When it touched the rock, it hissed faintly, releasing a sharp, metallic scent that burned his nostrils. Jonathan crouched closer, curiosity winning over fear, and before he realized it, a splash of the fluid clung to his uniform. Instantly, he felt its power. The fabric of his camouflage darkened, colors leaching into unnatural shades. His skin prickled with heat, and where the liquid touched his legs, the hair began to fall away in small clumps, leaving smooth patches of raw skin. It wasn't pain, at least not the kind he could explain. It was something stranger, something that felt alive. The hum of the craft pulsed once more, then faltered. The ring of lights circling its hull dimmed, flickered, and finally went out as if surrendering to silence. The jungle seemed to lean in, every insect and bird call swallowed into nothingness. And in that silence, Jonathan heard it. Not a voice, not in his ears, but deep inside his mind. A presence calm yet urgent, whispering in thoughts that were not his own. "Do not fear, help us, it will be all right, we mean no harm." Jonathan staggered back, his chest heaving. His eyes darted to the hatch, to the pale arm that still hung motionless, and for an instant he thought he saw movement within the shadows. Shapes shifting, eyes watching. He couldn't tell if they were alive or if he was dreaming them into existence. Oh, the connection deepened. Images flashed across his mind like fragments of a forgotten dream. Skies filled with strange stars, oceans of silver light, and faces, delicate and otherworldly, gazing at him with silent plea. He felt their fear, their desperation. They were dying. They needed him. "Wagan!" A shout broke the trance. Sergeant Allen's voice cut through like a blade. He and Atkins were waving frantically from the ridge, their faces pale, their voices urgent. "Step away now!" Jonathan blinked, the vision snapping like glass. The humming ceased. The silence of the jungle rushed back, heavy and suffocating. He looked at his hands, still trembling, the strange liquid dripping from his fingers. For the first time in his life, he understood what it felt like to stand on the threshold of the unknown. And he knew with a certainty that chilled him to the bone, whatever had crashed here was not from Earth. Jonathan barely had time to pull away from the craft before the air around them began to shift. At first, it was a distant vibration, a low rumble carried on the wind. Then came the unmistakable thudding of rotor blades, deep, heavy, growing louder with every passing second. The Marines turned as two massive CH-47 Chinook helicopters thundered overhead. Their dark silhouettes cut across the moonlight, floodlights sweeping the jungle below. The air filled with dust and shredded leaves as the machines descended into a nearby clearing. Allen cursed under his breath. Atkins raised his weapon instinctively, though against what, he wasn't sure. These weren't rescue birds, they hadn't called for support. No one had. From the swirling haze of rotor wash, they emerged. Men in black camouflage, their movements precise, silent, and chillingly efficient. Their faces were hidden beneath visors and night gear, their rifles trained. Not on the crashed craft, but on the Marines themselves. Jonathan's gut twisted. This was not backup, this was containment. One of the black-clad men raised a gloved hand. The order was simple, disarm. Confusion rippled through the squad. "We're Marines!" Allen barked, his voice carried away by the roar of the helicopters. "Who the hell are you?" No answer came. Instead, the team was rushed, their weapons ripped away with ruthless speed. Jonathan resisted, fury boiling in his chest. He swung at one of them, his fist connecting with a helmeted jaw. For a moment, the man staggered back. It was a mistake. In seconds, Jonathan was slammed to the ground, his face pressed into the dirt. A boot crushed the back of his head, forcing him down into the strange, shimmering fluid still pooled beneath the cliff. The liquid smeared across his skin, soaking into his uniform, burning cold and hot at once. He gasped, choking on the metallic tang, his vision flashing with white sparks. The others tried to protest, but the men in black moved too quickly, too brutally. Within moments, the squad of Marines was stripped of their gear, reduced to stunned silence under the weight of unspoken threat. And then from the belly of the Chinooks came the next wave. Figures in heavy protective suits, hazmat gear, mop gear, rain cloaks, some with full helmets, others with thick masks, spilled into the clearing. Their uniforms bore a label that struck Jonathan harder than any blow. Doe Department of Energy. The jungle seemed to hold its breath as these figures advanced toward the craft. They carried instruments that clicked and hummed, lights flashing red and green. Some held containment units, others dragged long metallic cases that gleamed under the helicopter floodlights. Jonathan was yanked upright, his wrists bound, his body trembling with the strange effects of the liquid. He caught sight of the DOE team moving toward the cliff, their floodlights reflecting off the craft's dying hull. For the first time, he realized the truth. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't discovery. This was retrieval. The DOE agents had come prepared as though they had known exactly where and what would fall from the sky. Bound and helpless, Jonathan felt the terror creep deeper than his bones. He had seen the impossible, and now he was certain, whatever this was, the world would never be allowed to know. Jonathan's wrists were cinched tight behind his back with cold, unmarked restraints. Two of the black-clad soldiers dragged him toward the clearing, boots scraping against the stone. His body trembled, not only from the grip of his captors, but from the strange liquid still clinging to his skin. It tingled like static electricity, seeping into him as if trying to fuse with his blood. He stumbled once, collapsing to his knees. A soldier responded by shoving his face into the mud, grinding him down until he choked on dirt. A cruel reminder: resist and you will be broken. All around him, chaos unfolded with chilling precision. The DOE team in hazmat suits surrounded the craft, their floodlights painting the jungle in a harsh white glow. Instruments beeped, cameras clicked, cases were opened. Jonathan caught glimpses of long metallic rods, containment tubes, and heavy crates designed to hold something alive or something dangerous. The Marines, Alan Atkins, the others, stood at the ridge, stripped of their rifles, forced into silence by the black camouflage men. Their eyes met Jonathan's only briefly. Fear lingered there, but also helplessness. They knew none of them were in control anymore. Then Jonathan was hoisted onto a stretcher, his wrists and ankles strapped down. A gag was forced between his teeth, silencing any protest. He kicked weakly, but it only earned him another boot to the chest. His vision blurred as he was carried across the clearing, the world spinning with the thrum of helicopter blades. The craft loomed behind him, its iridescent surface now crawling with figures in protective suits. He could see them placing sensors on the hull, waving scanning devices, and most haunting of all, two of them climbing into the open hatch. One paused, shining a light inside, and for a fraction of a second Jonathan thought he saw movement, the pale shimmer of something not yet dead. Then the floodlight snapped away. He was lifted into the belly of the CH-47. The roar inside was deafening, filled with the metallic smell of oil, sweat, and the acrid tang of disinfectant. Around him, more DOE agents strapped down cases that vibrated faintly, as though what they carried inside wasn't entirely inert. A hand pressed against his chest. A voice, muffled through a respirator mask, barked an order Jonathan couldn't understand. Moments later, a needle jabbed into his arm. His vision swam, and for an instant, he thought he felt the alien voice again, soft, urgent, echoing in his skull. "Don't be afraid, you are chosen, you will remember." The drug burned through his veins, dragging him into darkness. When he woke again, it was no longer in the jungle. It was underground. Concrete walls, cold air that smelled of chemicals, lights too bright to be natural. He was alone on a stretcher, his restraints still tight, the echoes of footsteps in hallways he could not see. For 2 days, Jonathan was kept there without answers, without explanation. No interrogations, no direct threats, only isolation. The only human contact he remembered was a doctor, silent behind a mask, who forced a syringe into his arm, an anthrax booster, he was told curtly. Why? He was given no reason. No one spoke to him about the craft. No one asked what he saw. It was as if the event had never happened. And when they finally released him back to his unit, it was with no mention of his comrades, no sign of Sergeant Allen or Atkins. He would never see them again. But the silence was worse than the beating, worse than the restraints. The silence was deliberate, suffocating, a wall built around the truth. Jonathan understood now. He had seen something forbidden, something humanity was not meant to know. and he knew deep down that the men who silenced him were not done with him yet. When Jonathan opened his eyes again, the world was no longer green with jungle but gray with stone. The air was frigid, recycled, carrying the faint smell of bleach and iron. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, humming with a constant, lifeless tone. He lay on a metal-framed stretcher, straps tight around his wrists and ankles as if he were some dangerous prisoner. The room was small, windowless, with concrete walls slick with condensation. Pipes rattled above his head. He tried to lift his body, but the restraints cut into his skin. His throat was dry, lips cracked, and the taste of metal lingered on his tongue from the gag they had forced into his mouth. Time dissolved into a blur. No clocks, no voices, only the echo of footsteps in distant corridors, measured, deliberate, never hurried. Whoever walked those halls had no reason to rush. They already had complete control. Occasionally, a figure would appear, always masked, always silent. A gloved hand would check his vitals, adjust straps, or inject another syringe into his arm. The sting was brief, followed by a flood of heat that left him weak, dizzy, and heavy with sleep. One word repeated itself in his foggy memory: anthrax. Why anthrax? Why now? He tried to ask, tried to force words out, but every attempt was ignored. Questions dissolved into the sterile air like smoke. On the second day, something shifted. He woke from a drugged haze to find a pair of eyes above him, human but cold. The figure didn't wear the heavy hazmat suits this time, just a medical mask and plain uniform. The man's voice was muffled, detached, almost rehearsed. "You were exposed," he said, no explanation of to what or why. "You will not speak of this, ever." The words echoed in Jonathan's skull, less like an order and more like a curse. That night, if it was truly night in that underground place, Jonathan dreamed, but the dreams were not his own. He saw the craft again, glowing softly as if alive. He felt the liquid on his skin, searing yet familiar. And he saw the beings inside, tall, thin silhouettes with dark, unblinking eyes. They reached toward him, not in threat but in plea. Their thoughts pressed into his mind like ripples in water. "Remember us. Do not let them bury the truth." He woke drenched in sweat, gasping for breath, the restraints rattling against the metal frame. For a moment, he thought the vision had been caused by the drugs, but in his heart, he knew it was more. The same presence he had felt at the crash site had followed him here, speaking to him even through concrete and steel. And then, just as suddenly as it began, it ended. On the third morning, Jonathan was released. No explanation, no paperwork, no trace. The straps were cut, his uniform returned, laundered, sterilized, as if the jungle stains and alien residue had never existed. He was escorted out of the underground corridors. Blinded by daylight, he had nearly forgotten and placed back into routine duty. No mention of Allen or Atkins, no acknowledgement of the crash, nothing. The message was clear. It never happened. He had imagined it, and if he wanted to keep breathing, he would never speak of it again. But deep inside, Jonathan knew the truth. He had seen the craft. He had touched its strange, living skin. He had heard the voices from within, and he knew the silence forced upon him was not the end. It was only the beginning. Years passed, but the memory of that night never left Jonathan. It clung to him in dreams, in the moments between waking and sleep, when his mind was vulnerable. He would see the ravine, the craft wedged in stone, its surface breathing with shifting colors. He would feel again the strange liquid burning on his skin, and always, always he would hear the whisper, "Remember us." But the world around him demanded silence. His superiors never spoke of Peru. The official reports vanished. Fellow Marines who had been with him either refused to talk or turned cold, as if some invisible hand pressed down on them too. Allen and Atkins disappeared into the folds of military routine, avoiding his gaze, their silence heavier than words. Jonathan's own life became a prison. He began to notice shadows where there should be none. Cars parked outside his home, the same license plates returning night after night. His bank accounts were tampered, with money shifting in ways he couldn't explain. His car broke down mysteriously after every inspection. He wasn't paranoid, he was being watched. Friends told him to forget it, to move on, but how could he? How could anyone erase the sight of a dying craft bleeding light into the jungle or the touch of a voice not from Earth? By the year 2000, the weight of silence became unbearable. That was when Jonathan found Dr. Stephen Greer's Disclosure Project, a gathering of military and government whistleblowers ready to testify about UFO encounters hidden from the public. For the first time, he realized he wasn't alone. Others had seen, others had been silenced. He reached out, his voice trembling but determined. "I was there," he told them. "I saw what they tried to bury." When Jonathan finally stood before the cameras, giving his testimony, the air felt electric. He recounted the crash, the liquid, the presence in his mind, the black-clad soldiers, the Department of Energy team. Each word weighed heavy, not only with memory but with fear, for he knew that by speaking he had signed away his safety. Afterward, reprisals followed swiftly. More surveillance, more tampering, phone calls that ended with silence. Anonymous threats whispered like poison. "You should have stayed quiet." Yet Jonathan endured. He laughed with friends, joked with fellow veterans, lived his life as if the shadows didn't press against his every step. But at night, in his dreams, the beings still came. Their eyes glowed with sorrow, their voices echoing through the corridors of his mind. "You did not forget. Good, do not let them erase us." Jonathan knew he was now marked by two worlds, one human bent on burying the truth, the other not of this earth, reaching out for remembrance. And so he lived in the in-between, forever caught between silence and revelation. The voice lowers, calm and mysterious, as if leaning closer to the listener. Jonathan Wagan's story is one of silence, secrecy, and a truth hidden in the shadows. But the question remains, what really fell from the skies of Peru in 1997? Was it an accident, a secret operation, or something not of this earth? A pause, the music shifts, slow and haunting. Perhaps we will never know, or perhaps the answers are still out there, waiting for us to ask the right questions. The tone deepens, carrying a note of urgency. What do you believe? Was Jonathan a lone witness of an event too big to be told, or a messenger chosen to carry the memory of something extraordinary? A final whisper, almost like a secret shared between narrator and viewer. Share your thoughts below. Let us know if you think the silence is protection or a cover-up. And if you want more untold stories, mysteries hidden in plain sight, and secrets buried in the skies, remember to like this video, subscribe to X site, and join us as we search the shadows together. Music swells into a chilling outro, fading with the echo of the words. The truth is closer than we think, but will we ever be ready for it?